If you look at every city in the world 100 years ago, you'll find that you would have lost your gold in every city on earth except for Geneva and Zurich. Bitcoin is competing with you buying land or you buying stock or you buying gold or you buying currency and using it to store your value for the next 30 years or more. This is just technology. It's better technology. All you got to do is buy it and wait for the rest of the world to figure it out.
So hi everyone, we are in for a very, very special treat today. In my opinion, we have one of the best Bitcoin investors in the planet joining us. And he's not just here because of his conviction, but also of how he executes in times of volatility. We have none other than the president, CEO, and chairman of MicroStrategy, Michael Saylor, joining us today in the show. Michael, it's an honor to have you.
Thank you for having me.
There's a lot of people, at least in Southeast Asia, that Bitcoin cryptocurrencies are, number one, a scam. They're skeptical about it. They think that it may still go to zero. My question first is two-pronged. Number one, what did you see in Bitcoin at first that you said that this is the future? And why don't you think that in spite of the volatility and all of the FUD that's out there, it won't drop back to zero?
I think that the place you have to start is with the technology. So the defining technical movement of the past decade has been the dematerialization of products and services onto mobile devices. When we figured out how to put a book on a mobile device, we sucked all the information out of libraries and all the information out of books. And we created Google, worth $1 trillion, and Apple iBooks. When we started pulling the photos out of the photograph, I mean, I remember when I used to have photos in shoeboxes.
Oh yeah.
And we dematerialized the camera and we dematerialized the photos and photo albums, and we created Facebook and we created Apple. So digital photos, digital books, digital maps, digital videos created YouTube. All of the great big tech companies of the past decade, Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Google, they're all $1 trillion companies. And what they're doing is they're creating these digital networks. So what is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is digital property. If I want to give music to 5 billion people, I can't do it with CDs and records and orchestras and pianos. I need to do it with streaming Spotify music or Apple Music or Amazon Music. And it's pretty obvious. You can have 50 million songs for $9 a month or for free if you go digital music. And if you go analog music, I can't give an orchestra and a piano, and I can't give 100 records to everybody on earth. If I want to give knowledge to everybody on earth, I need to provide digital books and digital lectures. I can't give everybody an MIT Harvard education for $250,000. I can't give everybody a library. The cost of the books that I used at MIT was $4,000, $5,000. Now it would be $10,000. So you have to have digital books. If you want to give property to 5 billion people, okay, you have $387 or some amount of money, and you want to save it for 100 years, and you want to give it to your grandson or granddaughter, and you don't want anybody to ever take it from you. How do you store property for 100 years? Well, the old technique was gold. Well, I know for a fact, if you buy $387 worth of gold, you'll pay a 40% markup. Okay. Well, what if you want to sell the gold? Well, you'll pay a 30% discount. Every time you trade it, it's plus 40, minus 40. Can you give gold to 5 billion people on the planet? No. You can't give property via gold everywhere on the planet. You can't carry gold through an airport. Every year, gold miners create more gold. They're inflating the supply and diluting it. If you look at every city in the world 100 years ago, you'll find that you would have lost your gold in every city on earth except for Geneva and Zurich. Every other regime sees the gold. So you can't give people property rights with gold. It's an antiquated idea. Generally, you get murdered, or the government seizes your gold, or the miners. If the miners produce 2% more gold a year over 100 years, that means you lose 85% of the value of the gold from inflation.
Oh.
So can you buy land? Try to buy $387 worth of land. Okay, where? I mean, the fees of buying land are high. It takes 6 months. It's illiquid. There's no $387 worth of land. How do you take the land from one country to another country? Property in the form of land, it gets property tax. If I own land in Florida, there's a 2% tax a year, which means over 30 years, I get taxed on 100% of the value of the land, because they keep raising the property tax and they keep reappraising the land up. So you can't store money in property. You can't store it in gold. Can you store it in the currency? No, the currency, the US dollar is inflating at 20% a year. That means you're going to lose half of your money in 3 years. You're going to lose 99% of your property over the course of 100 years if you store it in the currency. Can I buy stocks? What company are you going to buy that'll be around in 100 years? Okay, you know, how many people can buy Apple stock? Okay, how do you take Apple stock off the exchange? You know, like, so stocks are risky, and you're subject to antitrust risk, you're subject to unionization risk, you're subject to income tax risk, you're subject to employee tax risk, you've got competition, you've got to trust the board of directors and the CEO. So let's come back to the fundamental question. How do you give music to 5 billion people? Digital music. How do you give knowledge to 5 billion people? Digital video, digital lectures, digital books that are free. How do you give property to 5 billion people? Digital property. What is Bitcoin? Digital property. Bitcoin is the ability to buy $387 worth of property, carry it around on your mobile phone, send it to your grandson or granddaughter. You don't have to keep it in a bank. You don't have to trust a third party. You don't have to trust a CEO. You don't have to trust a company. You don't have to trust a country. It is digital property on an open monetary protocol. No one can screw it up. I have billions of dollars of it. I can't screw it up. I have no control over it. The enemy has no control over it. Your friend has no control over it. So it is the first time in the history of humanity that we have invented digital property. And when you're buying Bitcoin, it's like buying into the digital property network. It's like, you know, so how do I deal with volatility? Well, if you bought Amazon stock at any point in its history, it would have been volatile. It would draw down 80%, 5 times, I think. The only mistake you could ever have made would have been to sell Amazon stock. If you bought Google stock on its IPO, it went up by like 44,000%, some ridiculous number. The only mistake would be to sell Google. How about at Facebook? I bought Facebook stock before it came public.
Nice.
People said, well, what is this? A social network? I never heard of it. What is you going to do? We're going to collect and channel all of the social energy in the world. Huh? Well, that's worth $1 trillion today. I bought Apple stock when it's a couple of dollars a share. What is that? Well, I'm going to collect all the digital videos and all the digital photos and the digital communications in the world. Digital music, digital books. Huh? Well, what would be are they volatile? Yeah. Are they all going up? Sure. Why are they going up? Because 5 billion people have a mobile phone and they all want to store their communications, their videos, their books via software, and they want to move it at the speed of light and program it. So Bitcoin is competing with you buying land or you buying stock or you buying gold or you buying currency and using it to store your value for the next 30 years or more. Why is it winning? Because you can program $1 million block of digital gold, move it at the speed of light, and you can make 1 million transactions an hour on it. And you're never going to be able to program physical gold, and you're never going to move physical gold at the speed of light. So this is just a technology play. If you don't understand the technology, like a lot of people didn't understand Facebook. Okay, they didn't buy it. They lost $1 trillion. A lot of people, you ever use Google Maps? Google Maps looks like magic. You look at it, it tells you how fast the traffic is moving. How much better is Google Maps than a Rand McNally map?
Yeah.
A lot better. Why? Because it's a digital map. And so as long as you understand digital maps are better than physical maps, digital music is better than physical music, digital video is better than physical video, and digital property is better than physical property. Once you get that idea in your head, then you understand that Bitcoin is the future. Because if you want to build a 21st century cyber economy that 8 billion people can benefit from, 8 billion people are going to have mobile phones. 8 billion people are going to do 1 billion transactions a second with each other, or 1 billion transactions an hour. At the speed of light, they're going to want to program them. They're going to need to move value between New York and Tokyo, and we can't ship 30,000 pounds worth of gold between New York and Tokyo to run the 21st century economy. It would cost you $5 million. It would take 90 days. It's too hard. And so once you get in your head that I want to move $1 billion worth of money between New York and Tokyo in 1 second, therefore I need digital property on an encrypted network that's programmable. Once you get that idea, the light bulb goes off and you realize this is just technology. It's better technology. All you got to do is buy it and wait for the rest of the world to figure it out. 99% of the world didn't understand it a year ago. Today, 98% of the world doesn't understand it. If you roll the clock back 15 years, 99% of the world didn't understand Amazon, Google, Facebook, and Apple. Now they do. In 10 years, most people will understand that it makes sense for us to have property on a technology network in the palm of our hand, moving at the speed of light. Today, they don't understand it. They're afraid of it. They don't understand. They're like, well, Bitcoin doesn't move that fast. Well, yes, it does if you put a layer 2 on it. If you plug PayPal and Square and Lightning and any other network on a proof of stake network on top of Bitcoin, it does move at the speed of light. And it is programmable. People just lack imagination and they lack education. And once they start to understand that this is a programmable block of gold that moves at the speed of light, that grants property rights to 8 billion people, then the question is, do 8 billion people want property rights? Well, yeah. Like, do you want to be rich? Do 8 billion people want to be rich? I think so. Do 8 billion people want music for free and education for free? Would you like to give joy to 8 billion people? Give them digital music. Do you want to give education to 8 billion people? Give them digital education. Do you want to give wealth to 8 billion people? Give them digital property.
I wanted to ask this, that you mentioned earlier that last year there were 99% of the population investing. Now there's 98. For those 1% that entered when it was relatively higher, or for those who have not experienced the volatility, what's going through your head every time you see Bitcoin drop massively? And I guess the reason why I'm asking this also is, any words of advice for people that bought it and now they're not in a position where they want to be? What would you be doing?
The question is, are you an investor or are you a trader? And most people shouldn't be traders. If you're a trader, that's 1% of the population, then you can trade it. But Warren Buffett is the most famous investor of his generation. He said the optimal holding period for an investment is forever.
Yeah.
That's one. I mean, forever. He still owns Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola was a big company when I was in high school. Amazon dropped 95% from its peak. Okay, if you had sold it, you would have lost. I think from there it went up by a factor of 200 or 300. The point is just wait. Don't do something, do nothing. Wait. If you bought Apple 30 years ago, give me the day when you should have sold it. Never. If you bought Amazon in the last 40 years, when should you have sold it? Never. The richest people in the world, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, what did they do? Nothing. They didn't do any. What they did is they didn't sell, right? The reason that Jeff Bezos is rich is because he didn't sell Amazon. The reason that Warren Buffett is rich is because he didn't sell. So there's only two challenges. One challenge is pick the right asset. You either have to buy it or create it. Okay, so is Bitcoin the right asset? It's the dominant digital property network on Earth. 150 million other people think it is. It's 50 times bigger than the next like-kind thing.
Yep.
Pick the right asset, buy it, wait, and stop looking at the paper every day. If you stare at the price of something every week, you're going to give yourself a lot more anxiety than if you look at it once a year. If you look at it every day, you're going to have more down days than if you don't. If you look at it every hour, you're going to give more anxiety. You can look at it every minute. You can look at it every second. It's just like anything. If I take a microscope and I zoom into your face and I zoom in by a factor of 10,000, I'm going to find a blemish, right?
Yeah.
If I just keep looking. So I think that some people sabotage themselves. They're actually caught up by the Twitter, the Twitter world. Is like every second of the day, I'm looking for some information to give myself anxiety. 99.99% of the information is noise. It's not news. It's technology. Think of it like Apple Computer. If you had bought Apple Computer in the year 2000, would you tell yourself, go back and check the newspaper every day and figure out whether you should sell it? You know, it's just a very simple idea. Stop looking and stop getting concerned about it. Successful businesses and successful business people and successful investors, they're successful because they have conviction. If you don't actually know that Bitcoin is digital property, if you're not sure that it's the right solution, then spend 1,000 hours studying it. If you go to hope.com, we've got courses on Bitcoin, we've got lectures on Bitcoin, we've got books on Bitcoin, we've got books on everything else. Spend 100 hours, 1,000 hours, 10,000 hours until you figure out whether or not it is or isn't the right thing. If you're building a building 200 years ago, you built it with masonry, with brick, and it couldn't be more than 6 stories. And then at some point we could use iron and we could get it up to about 10 stories. And then we discovered steel. And when we started building buildings with steel, they became 100 stories. And if you actually do the right work with steel and you paint it, maintain it, it'll last 100 years. If you actually figured out steel and you were an engineer, would you go back to the building every week and ask the question, should I unbuild the building and build it of brick again? Is the building going to fall? Or would you actually figure out that steel works and keep using steel? Or would you actually change it and make it iron or make it clay or make it stone? It's like if you're an engineer, there's an answer.
Yep.
There's an engineering answer. Figure out the answer. You should build your buildings in steel. You should build your planes in aluminum. Right? And Bitcoin is an answer. If you want to store property for 100 years, it's the answer. Put your money in it. Wait, that's the solution to the problem. If you don't know it's the solution to the problem, study it. But here's how you get yourself in trouble. I spent 2 hours. My friend told me I should buy it. I don't know why I should buy it. I don't know if it's steel or it's balsa wood or it's clay. So I just kind of did it. And then I read a piece of news story and I got worried, and so I sold it. And now I lost some money. I'm angry. It's like, you're not really ready to make a decision with your life. You should make the decision based on study and careful consideration of it. So I guess my other point on this is if you're thinking you're buying it so you make money in the next 3 months, you shouldn't buy it. You know, you should have like a 4-year time frame. I don't think anybody's ever lost money holding Bitcoin 4 years. But you know, you can lose money buying anything in a day, right? And I really think the Bitcoin is the ideal thing to buy if you want to hold your money for a decade to 100 years. It's property, it's generational wealth. So take money that you want to invest for more than a decade and buy Bitcoin. If you bought a piece of land in California, you wouldn't keep getting a price quote on it every minute. If you actually went to everybody in the world and asked them if they would buy your land from you at a price higher than the price that you paid for the land, on Saturday night while you're drunk, you might find someone that offered you half as much for the land or for your house. And then you would say, oh no, my house lost half its value. And you would be so upset. It's because you're poking the world to give you anxiety. And that's what Bitcoin is sometimes. It's like someone on Saturday night is bidding less for it than what you paid for it. What you ought to do is just turn off the phone and think, I bought it because I wanted to hold it forever.
You gave a context of Bitcoin being a store of value or of digital gold. Do you ever see a point in somewhere in the future that we would see a lot of real world transactions using Bitcoin really as cash?
Well, the way it works is you're going to see digital currencies like the US dollar and the euro and the yen. They're going to circulate as stable coins or as CBDCs on the layer 2 at the speed of light. And then Bitcoin is an asset or its property. It's going to sit at the layer 1 and it's not going to circulate that fast. Like if Bitcoin's going up at 20% a year and if cash is losing its value or currency is losing its value at 20% a year, why would you want to sell the thing going up in price to buy something going down in price? You see? So I think that the real architecture here is 8 billion people on the planet holding a mobile device with a digital wallet that holds digital currency and a digital asset. And Bitcoin is the asset, it's the property. It's going up in value. The currencies are going to be the dollar, the euro, the yen. They're going to be the strong currencies. The weak currencies, like Venezuelan currency, Nigerian currency, Zimbabwe currency, any currency, and Lebanese currency, Syrian currency, these currencies are collapsing. So what's happening is people want to replace those weak currencies with the strong currency. In Argentina, they would definitely swap out the peso for the dollar if they could. Only about 10 strong currencies in the world. And most of them are pegged to the dollar. Like the Chinese yuan is even pegged to the dollar. So what we're really going to see is the US dollar is the world's reserve currency, and that's going to go to 5 billion people on digital rails. And then Bitcoin is the world's reserve asset. And, you know, sometimes people imagine paying sats for things. The only place you would ever use that is, well, I just don't think it's ever going to happen, to tell you the truth, because I think that even if the country collapses, when the government loses its currency, like in El Salvador after their civil war, they collapsed and they dollarized. When weak nations, when their currency collapses because their government collapsed, because their banking system collapses, they normally dollarize. They adopt a US dollar. And so I think that if the 100 nations in the world with a weak currency have their currency collapse, the world will actually flip to US technology. Right? They don't invent their own mobile phones, right? Like when your government collapses and your currency collapses, you don't replace Google. What happens is you adopt Android because it's the cheapest mobile technology, and you buy a $50 Android phone and you use all the free stuff. You use YouTube and and maybe some people can have an iPhone. when a country collapses and its currency collapses, they adopt English, they adopt the US dollar, they adopt American technology or Western technology. They will adopt a CBDC or a stable coin dollar as the currency. They will use a layer 2 solution, either a compliance solution like Google Pay or like Square Cash or PayPal, or they'll use Lightning as the layer 2 solution. And then they'll adopt Bitcoin as the underlying property for property rights, because it's the highest value, pristine property in the world. Profitability of Bitcoin mining is somewhere between tripled and quintupled, right? Because the hash rate on the network has been cut by 65% or 60%, which means that all the remaining miners are getting 2.5 times as much revenue. They've doubled their revenues, but their costs have stayed the same. And so in any business, if I doubled your revenues and your costs were the same, if you were running a 30% margin before, when I double your revenues, you're running a 65% margin, and your operating income triples or quadruples.